Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi appreciates US President Trump's sentiments after he reaffirms friendship with Prime Minister Modi, calls ties with India a special one. Tensions continue to play out between US and Venezuela as Trump sends additional 10 stealth fighter planes to a growing military buildup in the Caribbean coastline. Trump rebrands defense with Department of War, signs order to rename Pentagon, sending a message of victory to the rest of the world. UK Prime Minister Starmer shakes up top team after Deputy Rayner quits, Foreign Minister Lammy to become and take the post. Cooper and Mahmood also get the new jobs. And in hockey, Asia Cup 2025, all eyes set on India as it is ready to take on China in a bid to reach the final. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has appreciated US President Donald Trump's comments on relations with India. Taking to social media X, Prime Minister Modi said, and I quote him, "Deeply appreciate and fully reciprocate President Trump's sentiments and positive assessment of our ties. India and the US have a very positive and forward-looking, comprehensive and global strategic partnership." This is the breaking news we're receiving. We are getting at this hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has appreciated US President Donald Trump's comments on relations with India. Remember, this comes after Donald Trump made a scathing remark at the growing friendship between China, Russia and India. And today we see Trump saying that the relationship between India and the US is a special one and that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is a close friend. So here we have the breaking news. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has appreciated and reciprocated the comments put forth by President Donald Trump. Up on your screens, we have the breaking news coming in. Prime Minister Modi appreciates Trump's comments on relations with India. Deeply appreciate and fully reciprocate President Trump's sentiments and positive assessment of our ties. Donald Trump had earlier described India-US ties as a very special relationship, and he also said that he would always be friends with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So this is the breaking news we are getting this hour. Remember, this development comes after President Trump's lost India comment a few days back. Prime Minister Modi has appreciated Trump's comments on relations with India. He says, deeply appreciate and fully reciprocate President Trump's sentiment and positive assessment of our ties. Earlier, Trump had described India-US ties as a very special relationship, saying he would always be friends with Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
He's great. Prime Minister, he's great. I'll always be friends, but I just don't like what he's doing at this particular moment. But India and the United States have a special relationship. There's nothing to worry about.
All right, so up on our screens, we saw the soundbite of President Trump where he talked of appreciating the relationship between India and US, and also Prime Minister Narendra Modi appreciating this thought and sentiment by President Trump, and he also did say that India also reciprocates the same. Our correspondent Akshay Dongre joins us with more on phone line. Akshay, what do you make of this U-turn that has been seen on part of President Donald Trump? At the same time, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also saying that India reciprocates this sentiment put forth by President Donald Trump.
Well, Preeti, seems like there is an off-ramp now, finally, for the U.S. government and the president of the U.S., especially, given the fact that the kind of hostile statements that have been coming in, there were always experts thinking that there will be an off-ramp there will be a rethink, and the relation between the two countries are quite important. In fact, in the last decade and this decade as well, the ties between India and the US have been considered as defining ties between of the century as far as the region is concerned. Both the countries have had immense progress in bilateral ties as well as trade and security ties as well. But the kind of hostilities that we have seen were unprecedented. India held on its ground. Prime Minister's leadership was quite detrimental as far as uh, deciding or rather sailing through these troubled waters are concerned. Prime Minister's leadership was quite important and crucial in that hour of need, and the government held on to the sort of stand that the government took, and it now seems that the US also has realized that you cannot push around major economies, with the world's largest democracy, the world's largest country in terms of people, just like that. The kind of statements that were coming from Peter Navarro, or even the Commerce Secretary that has just come. It seems that at the top level there was a rethink, and the U.S. President Donald Trump had realized that you just cannot use anything that comes to your mind, make any kind of statement,
Right.
and push the world's largest democracy in absolutely opposite part of the world, just like that. That has been one of your most crucial allies. Back to you, Preeti.
All right, Akshay, now President Donald Trump is not new at throwing surprises, but then his comments right after the photographs of the SCO summit surfaced did raise eyebrows. And now that when he is trying this, he has come up with this damage control appreciation of India-US ties, how far will it hold ground in the times ahead, given the way you were also putting for us how India has remained steadfast with its own stand? But at the same time, how do you read President Donald Trump's mind here? To what extent will it hold ground in the future when we talk of the relationship between the two countries?
Well, as far as the statement that has come from Donald Trump is concerned, or the kind of stand that India maintained, see, we have to understand that India's stand when it comes to the oil from Russia, or when it comes to its foreign policy, it has nothing to do with, countering other countries, or joining a bloc. India is a major economy and a major democracy that has always been non-aligned, even during the Cold War. When you look at the times right now, India has always held on to its own interest and the interest of its people, especially the marginalized people, especially the lower middle class and the lower class people who are who will be devastated by buying costlier oil, who will be devastated by if there are certain trade tariffs that are lifted, because the economy is still developing. You cannot actually compete with an economy 5 or 7 times your size without tariffs and without certain protections that you have to provide your market. So that's what the Prime Minister also says. The Prime Minister is saying that he's deeply appreciative of the stand that Donald Trump has, or the statements of Donald Trump, and the relation between the two countries are quite comprehensive. And he deeply appreciates and reciprocates the sentiments of the positive assessment that Donald Trump has made. Now, irrespective of all of the statements and all of the hostilities that were there, you have to realize that in foreign relations there are no permanent enemies or friends. There are only permanent interests, and that applies to all the countries. US values India because India is the world's largest democracy. It is a democracy with shared values in another part of the world where the waters are troubled for even the US. In fact, we saw the kind of statements coming in one after another. And now, Donald Trump has said that he will always be friends with Prime Minister Modi. There is nothing to worry about, in fact, between India and US. Now, nothing to worry about. So we have to break down the statements one by one, because, these are statements of the world's most powerful man, but the leader of the world's most powerful country and economy. So when he says that nothing to worry about, it seems that there has been a rethink, and a quite serious rethink, and now finally an
Yes.
off-ramp. So it seems that there will be now attempts made to bring closer ties to India, but the kind of we also have to keep in mind that the kind of situation that has been there. So India will obviously take care of its own interest and make policies keeping in mind its own security, as well as both in terms of national security and trade security, because the kind of meetings between Trump and Asim Munir that took place a couple of a month back, barely, also has hurt the Indian psyche to a great extent. Corrections have to be made in that manner as well. The kind of fight India is fighting against terrorism in Pakistan,
Yes.
that has to be supported by US as well, not only in words but in action. If when he says that just a few hours back that he has lost India, perhaps this was the moment of realization that you cannot actually treat a sovereign country like India the same way that US perhaps would have treated the smaller, smaller
All right,
countries
Akshay, I'll
or
ask you to take that a
economies.
little forward for us.
Right.
With Donald Trump, President Donald Trump retracting on his statements, at the same time appreciating India-US ties and calling Prime Minister Narendra Modi a close friend, also throws light on India's growing stature on the global page, given the geopolitical equations, the way they are changing, given the present geopolitical challenges which the world is facing. It does throw light. What kind of light does it throw, in fact, on India on the global page under the leadership of Prime Minister
Well,
Narendra Modi?
Donald Trump has realized that India is a sleeping giant.
Yeah.
India is not an aggressive country. India is not a country that sends its troops to other countries or tries to claim the territories of other countries. It silently is working towards the benefit of its people. It silently is working towards the benefit of the humanity as a whole, to world peace. So India has always been this sleeping giant that doesn't bother anybody, but it also doesn't take any kind of threats or any kind of statement that questions it's rather be it economy or be it sovereignty or be it self-respect of Indians. So that remains paramount. Prime Minister has made sure that the self-respect of each and every Indian remains intact. He took a stand when it was most required. He took a stand when Donald Trump was questioning the Indian economy. He was questioning the ties. He was pressurizing the traders. He was pressurizing the people and the industries. But we are not a country that is dependent. We are a country, a civilization rather that started thousands of years before US was even formed. We survived quite well. We will survive quite well even now. There is support from the US. There is good trade relations with the US or not. What we are looking at this point in time is a rethink and a moment of realization by the US that this is 21st century and not 20th century anymore, and it's not a unipolar world anymore, and India remains a very, very important country, and it remains a sovereign country that is not going to take any kind of threat towards its be it economy or be it people. Back to you, please.
All right, Akshay, now India buying oil from Russia did irk President Donald Trump, and we've seen how US has put sanctions almost to the tune of 50% on India. Having said that, do we expect this statement of President Trump hailing India-US ties and calling Prime Minister Narendra Modi go further in the future, in the longer run? Though it is a little too early to estimate or speculate, but then do we expect some softening in the US stand over, the recent the sanctions or the tariffs that have been imposed?
Well, there should be, Preeti, and the reason why I'm saying that is, you cannot build trade ties. You cannot build ties with a country and then suddenly you decide that those ties are not working, because in the beginning you shouldn't have given the sort of assurances that there will be ties, and people have invested in US-India relations, people have invested in US, the ties are going really well, and then suddenly the leadership changes and they decide that there are certain conditions if you want to continue, otherwise all of your investment is held hostage. So that is in fact quite quite a backstabbing, that would be quite a backstabbing behavior. So as far as the U.S. government is concerned, certainly they should look back at the kind of mistakes that have happened in the recent times. But we are not dependent entirely on the U.S. We are a very, very major market economy, and we will thrive quite well without the support of any country. In that case, so no, we are looking at forming friends and allies at global scale, but not at cost of self-respect. Exactly.
All right, Akshay, for the benefit of our viewers, very quickly, get us a quick background, a quick, look back at the events that led to this, and also how has the relationship between the two countries, evolved over the years. Now, during President Trump's first tenure, and now as the president of the U.S. for the second time, how have the ties evolved over the years?
Well, let's start from the last millennia. Let's start from 1999. Let's start from the Clinton administration, where after the nuclear test, there were sanctions, there were trade barriers, there were a lot of hostilities between the two countries. U.S. Did not appreciate the fact that India tested nuclear weapons. It questioned the entire non-proliferation moves that were being taken by the U.S. And then times changed. After 9/11, there was a war on terror. There was war in Iraq, and India was seen as a very important partner here. Then under the George Bush administration, there were nuclear treaties between the then government, and then the relations kept on evolving. But the really thaw-breaking and really major things have happened in the last 10 years between President Obama and Prime Minister Modi. Then there was Donald Trump, where the relationship escalated to a whole new level. Then the government changed, and when it comes to the last tenure of Donald Trump, we saw the kind of shared vision between the leaderships of the two countries. There were trade was increasing, investment was coming in, and then suddenly there were these, after the second term of Donald Trump, we saw sort of protectionism in the market, and that perhaps can be because the U.S. economy is slowly starting to stagnate, other economies are emerging. So there perhaps was a rethink that there should be certain protections. But at the cost of the allies, that was the biggest question, because you are not putting trade tariffs on your biggest adversary that you claim is China, but you are putting higher tariffs on an ally that you were thinking of having as a counterbalance to that growing might of China. So all in all, India has stuck to a non-aligned policy. India has been friends with the U.S. as well as the Soviet Union back in the Cold War, and India doesn't want to join blocs. It doesn't want to join any kind of international sort of grouping that is against another grouping. We are a grouping already. We are part of the Global South, and we talk about Global South. We talk about the welfare of the people of Global South and development of the region that has been either negated development or has not been able to achieve it. So as far as the ties are concerned, they have been evolving. They have they have grown quite significantly. But the situation at this point in time, and the things that we saw in the last 2 months was quite a shocker to the Indian psyche when it comes to the ties with the U.S. But now it seems that there is a realization, especially after the SCO summit, that it's self-respecting democracies do not take threats nicely, and you will further push them away. So that perhaps seems to be the reason that there is an absolute U-turn by the U.S. leadership on ties with the U.S.
All right. Akshay, I would also want you to, evaluate for us the second tenure of President Trump, where he appears to be coarse, where he appears to be unfazed, following a, by hook or by crook, or like my way or no way kind of, politics. Help us understand, what makes him follow this, in the sense that, I would want you to explain to us, given the present geopolitical situation faced by the world, where is US standing at present, given the way he has vowed to make America great again? At the same time, he is leaving no stone unturned to show the supremacy of America over other countries. Put all this together, what do you make of this unfazed President Donald Trump during his second tenure?
Well, partly there is a lot of challenge to the U.S. Clearly, we have to understand that U.S. has maintained that hegemony for a very long time. It has been a hegemon. It has been the sole superpower for about 20-25 years before the resurgence of China was starting to be quite visible. So there was clearly a sort of question within the circles of the U.S. government that whatever is happening is the kind of growth that is happening in other parts of the world, the kind of tariffs that economies like China and others are putting on the U.S., especially despite growing to such a large extent, is a sort of a threat to the U.S. hegemony. But U.S. did forget that, with moving times, it's not always going to be only the U.S. that is going to be on top. There are changes in the world global order, be it economy or be it global power. So there were questions, and the sort of moves that have been made by the Trump administration were protectionist. However, you have to be protectionist with adversaries, not your allies. The kind of statements that have been issued at times against the European Union leaders or against countries like India, those have been big question marks on the understanding of foreign policy by the U.S. government. It seems that there are two options. There is carrot and stick. It is always used by even the officials in the police and law enforcement to get things done. It's carrot is you try to be nice to somebody, and stick is you try to threaten someone. So apparently Donald Trump used the stick first. He used tariffs, used trade barriers, used other kind of economic restrictions, but it hasn't worked and it has failed very clearly. In fact, there were not just the people inside the U.S. government, but other allies, European allies of U.S. have been saying that, or rather have been urging the U.S. government to not move on the same path of alienating India. Otherwise, the statements that were coming both from inside the U.S. and from the European countries was that they have lost the century. And they have lost, and they have lost not only the century, but they will never become the global superpower if the entire region is isolated. So you have to understand, the Indo-Pacific gone, the Indian Ocean region gone. So if you do not have half of the world, that is, or rather the half of the world is inaccessible to you, especially the region that is the biggest oil-producing region, that is quite crucial for navigation, that is quite crucial for trade, then you have lost your half of the power. So that has been the realization. India still will not continue, or India, just because these kind of statements are made, it doesn't shift to any kind of major policy changes, because policies are not changed in any democracy just like that on statements. However, there will be an off-ramp, and it seems that India will find now some sort of negotiation at least possible with the U.S. leadership. Back to you, Preeti.
All right, Akshay, from here we are joined in by our correspondent Amritpal Singh. We will talk to him also about this breaking news. Amrit, how do you evaluate this change of stance, or if I may call it cautious maneuvering by President Donald Trump, from calling India lost to China to this day when he hails India-US partnership, relationship, and he calls Prime Minister Narendra Modi a close friend?
Look, it can be, Donald Trump's statement can be looked at from two aspects. One aspect is that Donald Trump is aware very much of the importance and significance of this relationship, just that he's a tough negotiator. He's using the tariff stick to rein in whoever he can and how much soever he can. Once India stood up and showed resilience, while respecting the foundations of the relationship, but also its limitations, Donald Trump realized that he can go so far and thus far and no further. And therefore, this change of, a tactic to appease India, to praise, the India-U.S. relationship, to praise Prime Minister Modi. So India's reaction has been that the Prime Minister Modi, he said that I appreciate and reciprocate the sentiments of President Trump and the positive assessment of the India-U.S. ties. So clearly, I think Donald Trump is trying to play, typically using the carrot approach towards the relationship, which a very seasoned statesman wouldn't do, but that's Donald Trump for you. But India has been consistent that it values the relationship. The relationship is built on shared values, shared aspirations, shared needs, the commonalities, and it is a significant relationship, and India attaches importance to it. I hope if Donald Trump has, I hope it's just not a tactic, and he realizes the foundations, the strong foundations of the relationship, then it would augur well for Indo-US ties, Priti.
All right, Amrit, having said this, do we expect this damage control diplomacy by President Trump to finally show in the way, U.S. has imposed tariffs on India, or for that matter, U.S.'s criticism of India buying oil from Russia in the near future? Any kind of softening that can be expected?
I think if Donald Trump really means what he says, I think there is some kind of softening, and his advisors would have spoken sense to him, saying that look, this approach is not going to yield much. India's made it clear that it will do trade with whatever countries it does, irrespective of the trade with the United States. It would not want to say buying on the issue of buying Russian oil. India has made it stand very, very clear to the Americans that, why India is buying this oil, how the Americans and the West encouraged India to increase its, oil buying from Russia, and how it brought stability in times when global supply chains were disrupted due to the war. So all that. So India's made its stand very, very clear to the Americans. Now, I think Donald Trump earlier thought that he could, browbeat India or use a bulldoze approach, which his advisors would have advised him that this doesn't seem to be getting the United States much far as India is concerned. So I think this change of stand is clearly reflective of the changes that he realizes are happening, and it would, as I said, augur well for the relationship if he goes ahead in a sensible and in a manner that's more sustainable and works out whatever issues that the two countries may have.
All right, Amrit, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details. That was our correspondent Amritpal Singh breaking down for us the latest that we're getting for you from US. President Donald Trump has praised India and US ties and has called Prime Minister Narendra Modi his close friend. Remember, this comes after just a few days back, President Donald Trump had put forth a scathing remark against India, calling India being lost to China. So here we have President Donald Trump retracting from his earlier statement. Up next, we're heading for a short break. We'll continue with this. Stay with us.
One of India's newest states, one of India's oldest lands, Jharkhand is a hidden treasure house of many wonders, from quaint towns to prehistoric rock art. From thrilling adventure sports to historical heritage sites. Discover your spiritual awakening among revered ancient temples.
The month of Shravan in the monsoons is dedicated to Lord Shiva. And that is when the temple gets its maximum footfall.
Johar.
Johar.
Feed your body and soul with Jharkhand's incredible spread of cuisines.
बहुत tasty लगा.
Come and explore Jharkhand for an experience like never before. Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
A bombing campaign against Iran. The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure, of every story that matters to you. You read between the lines, cut the clutter, and connect the dots to get you the full picture. Watch Connecting the Dots at these times with me, only on
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India Newshour and I'm Preeti. We will continue with the big breaking news we're getting this hour. President Donald Trump has hailed India-US partnership and has called Prime Minister Narendra Modi a close friend. This comes just after President Trump had called India lost to China and had also talked of this. He had given this scathing remark after the photographs of Chinese President Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Narendra Modi surfaced after the SCO summit. To talk more about it, we're joined in by our correspondent Jessica Taneja. Jessica, help us understand and decode for us this statement coming in from President Trump where he hails India-US relationship, at the same time calls Prime Minister a close friend. What do you make of this damage control diplomacy put forth by President Trump?
Well, India always looks for dependable diplomacy and what it offers in return. So, with America, as you heard the NBA spokesperson yesterday at the weekly presser state that the India-US relationship is based on a comprehensive global strategic partnership. And that pretty much remains to be a consistent line, not just from the Indian side, but on many other aspects of this relationship as well. Now, of course, given the kind of inconsistencies that have been thrown at this relationship with the implementation of additional tariffs and India being blamed for Russia's occupation in Ukraine, certainly dented that relationship in a sense. But I think people who are watching this relationship closely could tell that there would be a possible detente in the future. It has been a relationship that wouldn't sour to an extent where it wouldn't find recourse. And that with that certainty in mind is what this relationship has been viewed as, and perhaps it will come back on that trajectory. This was, as many people observed, a brief moment of tension in the relationship, as is with many other countries. And United States is one of India's largest trading partner. We export $80 billion more worth of goods. So, an important market, but between tensions that are prevailing and a potential bilateral trade agreement that was to be signed, all of that could see the works. But, one will have to wait and see as to how this entire detente is approached with and what kind of revelations come out of it. Because if you see Donald Trump, as you pointed out, the president of the United States yesterday had something very different, in fact, entirely different to say. And in just a few hours, the story is just as different as you and I are sitting down here and decoding. So, one should look at this relationship as something which would remain stable and would find common ground soon, given the two leaders and their relationship, even their personal relationship, as Donald Trump was also pointing out when he met him, earlier at the Rose Gardens, and how the bonhomie played out between the two. So, of course, it is difficult for America also to lose an important trading partner like India, which is providing much more resilience in supply chains as compared to many other big economies.
All right, Jessica, is it just about the supply chains, or does this retractment of statement on part of President Donald Trump throws more light on India's growing stature on the global page? And also, given the geopolitical difficulties, challenges which the world is facing at this time, what kind of light does it throw on how India is positioned on the global page at present?
When we look at India's position at the global stage, well, it is pretty much in the lines of multipolarity, a multipolar Asia. India wants to be making sure that the issues of the global south are well addressed in a world that has been settled on a post-Cold War culture, not just in terms of trade, but otherwise as well, ensuring that they have a place and their issues are addressed. So, of course, India's idea and understanding of what other country needs and the kind of leader it needs to be are placed in that sense. But with the recent developments, as is in many years we've seen in the past, if history were to teach a lesson, there have been tensions between various countries, and certainly they do end up finding momentum. And with a country like the United States, it is important that it continues a relationship with a country like India, the fourth largest economy, soon to now become the third largest, as and when it overtakes Japan. So an important partner, not just because of its economic heft, but also dependable diplomacy and a democratic nation that believes in the will of its people.
All right, Jessica, we'll leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those inputs. At present, we're joined in by Dr. Mohan Kumar. He's former Indian ambassador. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on DD India Newshour. To begin with, I would want you to, begin decoding for us. How do you analyze and how do you read this turn of statement or damage control diplomacy put forth by President Trump?
Thank you very much for having me. I think it demonstrates 3 or 4 things. One, we've always described the occupant of the White House as unpredictable and mercurial. I suppose this is par for the course if you understand the man himself. Secondly, I also believe that India did a good thing by standing firm, but also not getting into to use the Hindi expression for which I'm struggling to find an English equivalent, tu main main. If we had gotten into that and started abusing each other, I thought India acted with restraint. And despite a lot of his colleagues, not President Trump himself, and to be fair to President Trump, he never said anything against Prime Minister Modi or whatever, but a lot of his colleagues did use language that could have been considered intemperate by diplomats. But I thought we did well by not retaliating. That's verbally, I'm saying. And I think that's a very, very good thing. And the third thing is the Prime Minister, true to form, has picked his moment to reach out. This was a tweet by President Trump, which was very balanced and which did not put India in a bad light. He said, I have a great relationship and a friendship with Prime Minister Modi. This was the perfect opening, I thought, that India was looking for. And the Prime Minister has grabbed it with both hands. To the strategic community, I would have to say, on both sides, that is US and India, this will come as a huge sense of relief. Not because we want one side or the other to back down. That's not the point. The real point is There is too much at stake. Those of us who understand the US-India relationship know that this has every potential to be the most consequential partnership in the 21st century. And to see all of this go down the tube in the last few weeks was extremely painful for both sides, where a lot of people had worked so hard to build this relationship brick by brick. So all in all, I hope this is the end, because I'm hoping that there is no other volte-face and surprise in store. This gives a perfect opportunity now for both sides to have their main interlocutors hunker down, sit down, prepare the ground for a meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi as early as possible when circumstances allow that. But I think the work must begin right now. And we should, I think, request either side not to do public diplomacy. If there is one lesson, it is this. You cannot do diplomacy publicly by calling each other names and so on. Diplomacy is best done quietly, behind the scenes, between trusted interlocutors. So I'll stop here.
All right, sir, you're talking of closed door diplomacy, but at the same time, how do we see this, carry forward in the near future, in the sense that US has criticized India for buying oil from Russia? At the same time, we have tariffs, steeping tariffs by US to, on India to the tune of 50%. Would you say that this softening of stance by President Trump could somewhere reflect on the relationship ahead when you suggest the interlocutors to sit and talk? Can we expect some kind of softening with regard to trade talks, or with regard to, India-Russia, or for that matter, other issues that have been the bone of contention between the two countries in the, just recently?
I certainly think this will lead to an unblocking of the relationship, which we find in an impasse now. But to pretend that in the future there will be no issues at all between the two countries would be naive. Sequentially, and I'm trying to answer your question, sequentially, I hope we will do the following. This was never about trade. This was about a lot of other factors, and I will get into it in a minute if you give me the opportunity.
Yes.
First, trade. I think we have put forward on the table an excellent offer. And this I've heard even from American interlocutors. We have put forward an excellent deal. The deal was almost concluded when other factors, extraneous factors, overtook events. So I think we will have to now go back to the drawing board, seal the trade agreement first and say, okay, we will have a bilateral trade agreement by November. We have agreed in the interim to the following. So that's the first thing they will have to do. On purchase of Russian oil, my sense is that if we can project to the American side that we will make more purchases of energy from the United States, I think that should be a factor that will at least unblock the situation. To expect India to buy zero oil from Russia may not be fair, and in fact will be counterproductive, because the oil prices will then shoot up. And that is not something even the US wants. And that is not something even President Trump will want, given the midterm elections, given the impending midterm elections. So what we will have to do on the Russian oil is give reasonable assurances to the US side that, listen, we will do our best to buy from other sources, because we are committed to the energy security of 1.4 billion people. So that is the other thing that you will have to do. Last, I think we will have to, at least privately, we could have a conversation on Pakistan mediation and the rest of it. I don't want to speak publicly, but you'll have to allow diplomats to do their job. There are various ways in which we could convey to the Americans privately that, listen, this is a sensitive relationship. We have never favored external mediation. We cannot change now. but there are some things that we can do. So I think these are the three tracks in which interlocutors have to start working. To recapitulate, the trade deal; second, the purchases of energy; and third, I would say, our relationship with Pakistan. Finally, I would also say that India will have to present a strong case to President Trump and United States that the trade deficit is only one part of the story, that in services we buy a lot of things from the US. There's a lot of purchase of defense items. Indian students go and study in the US, although I realize that has dropped for a variety of reasons. We also can persuade them and tell them that, listen, we're buying a lot of Boeing aircraft from them. So there will have to be a full holistic presentation of the relationship to President Trump and his colleagues, so that they don't think that focusing on just one aspect of the relationship, which is, the trade deficit, that would be misleading. Having said that, I would also have to give credit to the American side, because despite the kind of problems that we have had, real talks and real exchanges never stopped. You will recall that we still had the Yuddha Abhyas, which is the joint military exercise which took place 3 days ago.
Yes.
About 10 days ago, we had the 2+2 dialogue virtually at the level of additional secretary. We've had intelligence cooperation recently between the US and India. So despite the trouble in the relationship, a lot of tracks have actually continued. Conversation has continued, work has continued. So it shouldn't be too difficult to take the relationship back to status quo ante. As I said, the main task now is to prepare the ground for a one-on-one meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi at the earliest opportunity.
All right, so we'll leave it here on this optimistic note. We'll end this conversation. Thank you so much for joining in with those inputs and that analysis.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. At this point, I am joined in by Ambassador C. Rajashekhar. He's former senior diplomat and former DG ICCR. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on DD India Newshour. To begin with, was this on expected lines, the way President Trump is not new at throwing surprises, but then when we talk of the damage which he did after calling India lost to China a few days back, and now calling India a good friend, calling Prime Minister Narendra Modi a good friend, and hailing India-US ties, how do you read that and how do you gauge that?
Good morning. It's nice to join you this morning. Say, diplomacy is always a constant, more so when it comes to such a consequential, such important relationship, partnership, global strategic partnership as the one between India and US. Traditionally, it used to be done at our level, functional level. Diplomats would negotiate, would prepare the deal, and then the principals, the leaders will come and smile and sign. But here, we have a very interesting, slightly different situation that President Trump believes in, like reality television. He wants to be in the front and center of action. So as a result, there is a little, flurry, there is a little flutter that suddenly there is extreme, this extreme, that extreme. You would recall that there was great bonhomie between our leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President, actually, he was not even president, Ab ki baar Trump ki sarkar. That was actually extreme gesture of friendship between, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, even deviating from the established diplomatic protocol that we don't comment on internal political choices. That being the case, President Trump was taken by extreme sentiment. Suddenly, he has started imposing high tariffs on top of it, topped it up with secondary sanctions. Contradicting his own word, he was on record in Alaska after meeting President Trump, President Putin. He was asked, "What do you think of secondary sanctions on those who purchase from Russia?" So he said that at the moment I'm not thinking, that can wait. But soon after that, again, he has imposed again 25%, which is rather, in the words of American diplomats, it's not exactly a friendly act. Now, having said that, both sides they have been wiser, saner, more sagacious observations and inputs. John Bolton and Sumit Ganguly and Ambassador Mohan Kumar has just now said that many wiser voices calling for patience and wisdom and let diplomacy have a chance. So that naturally in due course will prevail. That what we see is partly that President Trump affirming that Prime Minister Modi is a very seasoned, balanced statesman, and there is great value for friendship with India, even for United States. For United States, for India and the world, India-US relationship has great value. It is a source of stability and prosperity. This is an incontrovertible truth, regardless of my personal emotion at the moment. So that's what has come to the fore. President Trump, it is very heartening to note that has reaffirmed the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, and that as a person, he is a great friend. And immediately, Prime Minister Modi has heartily, fully reciprocated the sentiment. Now, as Ambassador Mohan Kumar has rightly listed, that we should let diplomacy run its course, that the trade negotiations should conclude. We did offer an excellent trade deal. There was some disagreement on agriculture and dairy sectors. There also, this is the best deal that was ever offered. And President Trump would personally, politically be much better off to accept this rather than pushing India, which is a major global energy power, into the embrace of China or BRICS. It is not in the interest, either economic or strategic interest of US itself. This has to be hammered both through diplomatic channels and also through various other informal channels.
All right, sir, you're talking of balanced and seasoned and steadfast statesmanship by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. To what extent did that play a role in this change of stance by President Trump? Having said that, what light does it also throw on India's growing clout on the global page, on India's image makeover on the global page, and also how will it further further show in the relationship in the near future?
So clearly, as the visuals from Tianjin at the Shanghai Cooperation Summit have projected, bringing global leaders, including President Putin, President Xi, Prime Minister Modi, and other leaders. US is not the only game in town. India is not without friends. India has civilizational goodwill and wisdom, and there are many people, many countries will be happy, keen to collaborate, to befriend, to partner, to work with India, because India is the most populous country of 1.4 billion people and growing steadily at over healthy, at a minimum of 6% per annum. So India is clearly the partner not to miss. So that is an incontrovertible fact. Plus that India would cross into the other camp of Russia, China, would certainly be not a very wise, not a very smart thing for US to see. And of course, at the same time, India also doesn't want to greatly values relationship with US. We have invested greatly, and we don't want to spoil relationship for any momentary, as Ambassador Mohan Kumar has put it rightly. For a small part, trade is only one aspect. There are also other more important aspects like people-to-people contacts, democracy or values, and also geopolitical positions, convergence of our interests on the global stage.
All right. As we close this conversation, sir, politics is not just about two persons, about two leaders. It is about the interests of the countries. Now, having said that, given the way President Trump has softened his stance, has retracted on his statement, will it, though it is a little hypothetical, but then will it also set an example for the other countries which President Trump is dealing with an iron hand in the near future as well?
Yeah, it's a constant, a dynamic calculus. Our relations between major powers are panning out, and accordingly we calibrate, we slightly reset, modify our stance. This goes on, to various countries. You see that, China has greatly warmed up to India since October last year. As they see that,
Yes.
President coming to the White House. So likewise, say in the game of chess, if you see, we don't take out the king first. Say king, is not coming to the war, so he first sends out pawns and other powers. So that has been the traditional approach of conducting statecraft. We have to adjust to this new style of President Trump. We shall not fall for any mood swings, but we have to always keep the profound value of India-US global strategic partnership, that it adds and multiplies value not only for India, for US, for the world also. India and US being the largest, most important democracies are a factor for stability and prosperity.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for joining in with those inputs and analysis. That was Ambassador C. Rajashekhar joining us and helping us understand this big breaking news coming in from the US, where President Donald Trump has appreciated India-US ties and also has called Prime Minister Narendra Modi his close friend. Remember, this comes just after stark criticism by President Donald Trump of India after the photographs between Russia, China and India at the SCO summit, after the SCO summit surfaced, and he called India being lost to China. So here we have President Trump retracting on his statement and now calling Prime Minister Narendra Modi his close friend, and also hailing India-US relationship. At the same time, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also in a social media post has appreciated this sentiment by President Trump, and he said that India also reciprocates this sentiment. On that note, we end this discussion here. We end this edition of DD India News Hour here. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.